Nigeria over the past week has marked the passing of a towering figure in its political history. Former head of state and two-term democratically elected President Muhammadu Buhari died at the age of 82. As tributes pour in, the country reflects on the complex and often polarizing legacy of a man who played a central role in shaping modern Nigeria, first as a military ruler in the 1980s and later as a civilian president from 2015 to 2023. This is Standpoint. I am Theophilus Ilama. Throughout his leadership, Buhari projected an image of integrity and discipline. He declared his assets publicly and launched a strong anti-corruption campaign. But his administration were also defined by economic instability, rising insecurity, and accusations of human rights violations. His tenure has been described as one marked by contradiction, praise for his efforts to fight corruption, while noting the challenges of Boko Haram insurgency, deadly farmer-herder clashes, and controversial movements like the EndSARS protest and the Naira redesign policy. Reactions to his death have been varied. President Bola Tinubu described him as a patriot and statesman who led with quiet strength and profound integrity. Former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, called him a converted Democrat who did the best he could within his limits. On today's program, we examine the legacy of Muhammadu Buhari, his leadership, his contradictions, and the imprint he leaves on Nigeria's democratic journey. Joining us for this conversation are three gentlemen. The former presidential candidate, Shito Mohammed Kabir, joins us from our Abuja studio. While on Zoom, we have the convener, Integration Summit Group, Nigeria, Chris Ekeyo, and the developmental scholar, Professor Jelili Adibi. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this segment this morning, or this afternoon, rather.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to join the conversation. Appreciate it.
All right, let's start with our guests in Abuja at this point. Looking at the ex-president's life and legacy, and looking at all he had done since he became president, what would you say stood out for you?
Thank you. May so rest in peace. May Al-Jannah Firdausi be his home. He brought two messages to Nigeria, and he stood with that message. The first is war against indiscipline, and the second is anti-corruption war. These are what he stands for. He tried his own best, but you can see in the area of anti-corruption fight, probably because he is sick and age is not with him. He could not perform so much in that respect. And he brought some innovations that help to put institutional, to improve the institutional anti-corruption he made, which was established by President Obasanjo. That's the EFCC and ICPC. He tried his best to make it. Be as it may, those are two things that he stood out for. And he can be described as a very resilient politician. In military, he performed, he also participated in the war, the civil war, where he said that they have to trek miles to be able to even go and fight the war on foot. So he put his best. He came as a civilian president, and for the 8 years, we will pass him a pass mark. He tried his best to see that, but I believe now that we have seen that he was sick, and that is why he could not do much. If President Buhari has died without being a civilian president, it will be, I think his tomb will become a marker of sorts. But being that 8 years of his presidency has really make the 20 or the 12 million followers to now have a feeling, a mixed feeling about his ability. So he has died, he has tried his best. We wish him Al-Jannah to Firdausi. But there's a lesson we must learn as Nigeria from what has happened. That he died in an hospital in London is a big lesson Nigeria must learn. It's a big lesson that the government must also learn. It is time that we should start putting infrastructures in our country. And we have to also be able to put both health, education, food security should be priority in the side of our government. There's no need that if our president is sick, yes, worldwide, president goes to other countries to seek for health. But ours, which is time that we learn from what has happened and then be able to put infrastructure that will help the country.
All right, former presidential candidate Shitsu Mohammed Kabir, thank you so much. Just hold on. Let's move to our next guest, Chris Akiyo, the convener, Integration Summit Group Nigeria, who's joining us via Zoom, as well as developmental scholar Professor Jalili Adebi. Looking at, let's start with Chris. Looking at President Muhammadu Buhari's legacy, a lot of people believed that his anti-corruption fights and his toga before he got into office wasn't as strong as expected. Many people voted him in on that platform, saying that he was going to fight corruption head on. How would you describe his anti-corruption drive as a president?
All right. So, you know, in Africa, they say you don't speak too much negative about the dead. So I want to focus on the positive.
Well, you don't have to speak negatively about the dead, quite all right. But we have to just pinpoint some of these issues so that many can learn from and push Nigeria forward, looking at the fact that he was a president of the country.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the expectations of Nigeria under Buhari was truly not met in terms of the fight against corruption. If anything, the average economist in Nigeria would agree that there were a lot of overinflated projects that were embarked on, and then gave Nigerians a lot of concern, knowing his pedigree, particularly
Chris Akiyo, it seems we've lost your connection there, but in case you can hear me, just hold that thought. Let's move to Professor Jalili Adebi, who is a developmental scholar. Professor, I would like you to take on that same question. How would you describe former President Muhammadu Buhari's anti-corruption fight?
When it comes to the assessment of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari's prosecution of corrupt cases, he left a mixed legacy in this area. And, you know, when he was in government, I was one of those that worked for him during the first time. And when I assessed him after the completion of his first term in office, I said he needed to retire back home. But he eventually emerged for the second term. And one of the things that became, you know, the vulnerability point of President Muhammadu Buhari was the personality label that was given to him before he became the civilian head of state, you know, president of the country. Many people consider him to be authoritarian. Many people consider him to be, you know, somebody who doesn't follow the rule of law, that he believes in the military style, whereby, you know, they will just grab you, put you into jail, and then it is after that that you'll be given the opportunity to explain yourself. And that was exactly what he did when he was the military head of state. And, you know, we live in a country whereby majority of those that are focal or that are controlling sources of information, they are folks that have looted state resources. And every single opportunity for them to be held accountable has been resisted in the country. So when Buhari was coming in, one of the things that they sponsored and used against the personality of Buhari was to label him as somebody who was not going to follow the rule of law. So interestingly, when Buhari came into office, he was aware of that label. And I think that affected how he went about prosecuting, the corruption cases during his time. And that affected his records as regards anti-corruption, fight against anti-corruption in the country. But one of the interesting things that we need to be aware of is that many presidents, including the incumbent, there are ways that they intervene in corruption cases and give soft landing to their own. There was no such intervention in the judicial processes during the time of President Muhammadu Buhari. If you had a case of corruption, all you need to do was for you to go to the court. If you're able to argue your case through the court, then you may get freedom. And if you are not successful in arguing your case in the court, then you have to face the penalty. So that's something that is positive about President Muhammadu Buhari, prosecution of corruption cases. The other thing that is positive about the prosecution of corruption cases during the presidency of Muhammadu Buhari was that it was not politicized. We know Obasanjo has this image that he was a president who fought corruption, who ensured that major corrupt individuals, especially the politicians, were prosecuted and jailed during his own term. But it turned out that those that were really jailed and prosecuted were the political adversaries of President Olusegun Obasanjo. And we knew what he tried to do with the current president. Lagos became a source of attraction and persecution under the presidency of Olusegun Obasanjo. And we also had the same experience, something very similar, under the presidency of Jonathan Goodluck. There was no such a thing under the presidency of President Muhammadu Buhari. Corruption prosecution was never turned into persecution. Those that had to stand before the court, defending corruption cases, allegations against them, these were folks that stole and looted from the treasury. So there was not one single individual. And in fact, when you listen to the opposition politician, during the time of President Muhammadu Buhari, they all said one of the areas he stood tall was that he refused to politicize corruption in the country. Like the former chief of the other guy, who was prosecuted, who was in charge of, the defense of the country. He was involved in diverting money meant for the security of the country, So every single person prosecuted during the time of President Muhammadu Buhari were actually involved in issues of corruption when they had one position, either elected position or appointed position or the other.
Okay. And
the other high point that I think it's important for us to pay attention to, which is a lesson for all of us. And I learned this from later Gani Fawehinmi. Gani Fawehinmi was a highly cerebral lawyer. He understood that for you to actually prosecute corruption in the country, you may need not to follow the A to Z of the spirit of the law completely. And that was why when Ribadu was inserted in such a way, one of the people that spoke up in support of Ribadu when he was in charge of EFCC was Gani Fawehinmi. And Gani Fawehinmi lived a life defending the processes, judicial processes, wanting judicial processes to be followed to the latter. Okay. But there was an exemption in his position about this issue. He knew that when you are talking about politicians looting the country, we are talking about animals. Okay, we are not talking about human beings. They've invested a lot of money to subvert the process. And that was why when everybody would take them, handcuff them, humiliate them, bonding them into jail during some period, Gani Fawehinmi defended it.
Okay.
If Buhari had done this, possibly would have seen a better result that matched the expectation of Nigerians in the areas of prosecution of corruption cases during the time President Muhammadu Buhari.
All right, let's go to Chris Akiyo. looking at President Muhammadu Buhari's anti-corruption fight, many have said that he routinely flouted court orders, rehashing Decree 2, which gives authority to arrest and detain individuals. In a democracy, of course, many believe that this was a high level of impunity. What do you think about all of this, Akiyo?
Well, I'll speak for a majority of Nigerians. Apart from those who became beneficiaries of this corruption, I don't think Nigerians were worried about the way and manner he went about prosecuting people who were corrupt. Because we are more concerned about dealing with corruption than any other thing. And that's why I was saying at the beginning that basically we expected more fight on corruption from him. So the just a poster that was used by the anti-corruption agency to go after people who were corrupt was because they had no other choice. These people were using democratic laws to try to hide under the Constitution or the certain acts of the Constitution to elude prosecution. So the anti-corruption agencies had to find ways and means to go after them in that manner. The question is, were these people corrupt? Do they have something against them? The answer will be yes. And you see, when my colleague was talking at the other end, now he said during the Jonathan era and Obasanjo era, it was politicized. I agree, but the point is, even though it was politicized, these people that were going after, were they corrupt? The answer is yes. So whether you are politically going after them and they are corrupt and you're trying to fight corruption on one or whether you are going after them, the President Muhammadu Buhari, it's giving for him a lot to do, a lot in terms of establishing a lot of universities, a lot of hydropower dams, and he was ambitious about trying to do railway infrastructure and all of that. Whether these things all became a reality or not also has to do with corruption. So while we're fighting corruption on the one hand, and then we open another wing for other maybe ministerial appointees or MDAs to get corrupt, it creates a problem. So for me, he did well as president, but his role in the entire 8 years. And they all left becoming very corruption under those 8 years was not as Nigerian expected. But in terms of deliverables, he made a lot of effort to address the issues of infrastructure while he was in office.
All right, so let's move now to Abuja studio, where former presidential candidate Shito Mohammed Kabir is already, he has spoken earlier, but let's have your own take on what Akiyo just mentioned about the fact that he tried to do a lot in terms of infrastructure. Are Nigerians satisfied totally with that aspect of his administration? Kabir Mohammed, can you hear me?
I'm not hearing them.
Okay, I think we will sort that out with our technical team, of course. Moving back to Professor Jalili Adibi, I will throw that question at you. Were Nigerians totally satisfied with these infrastructural developments all around the country?
I believe one of the areas where President Muhammadu Buhari's administration actually did really, really well compared to other presidents was the area of massive infrastructural development across the country. And interestingly, when you take a look back into his performance, when he was in charge of the Petroleum Trust Funds as the chairman of that agency between 1994 and I believe 1999, because he was there for 5 years, one of his major achievements was also in infrastructure. Back in the days, you know, for those of us that were old enough to know what was happening in the country back in the days, President Muhammadu Buhari, as the chairman of PTF, was really massive in the area of infrastructure. When you go to our universities back in those days, majority of the hospitals, they call them the health centers in our university, were renovated and, well adequately equipped with the necessary, with the essentials that they need to do their job. The same thing could be said about major roads that were completed when he was in charge of PTF. Even primary schools were also renovated across the country during his days when he was in charge of the PTF. And so therefore, it wasn't a really big surprise that when he became the civilian president, infrastructure also received a lot of attention under President Muhammadu Buhari. When I was in Nigeria, I traveled a lot, especially the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. It was a death trap. I used to remember the number of accidents that I counted on a weekly basis. I started taking, recording this in my diary. It was always scary, and every time I travel along that road, I was always afraid that possibly I was going to die. And it came around, what appeared, impossible to repair. The whole road was reconstructed and completed. That saved traveling time, and that saved the number of deaths recorded on that, along that route. We can also talk about the Abuja, Kaduna, Zaria, Kano Expressway. He also did most part of it were completed under the presidency of President Muhammadu Buhari. And there was something very pivotal that people have not been speaking about under his presidency in the area of infrastructural development. It is the executive order number 7 that was signed by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2019. Okay. And that was what gave the private sector the opportunity to use a lot of instruments like tax window for them to get involved in the construction of, in addressing infrastructural deficit in the country. That was a major one. When you talk about the railway, nobody believed the railway system in Nigeria could be revamped. Under the presidency of Muhammadu Buhari, we reformed the railway system in the country. And that gave a modicum of hope that things could work. When we have people who have the political will and who have the commitment to see through the completion of projects. Aviation was another big one. When you look at the aviation sector, we have the new international airport terminals that were completed during the time of President Muhammadu Buhari, the one in Lagos, the one in Kano, the one in Abuja, and more importantly, the one in Port Harcourt. That was a big one that he also completed. And then when you go to our university, major infrastructure projects were completed across the length of breadth of the major federal university, polytechnic, and colleges of education under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari. But that does not mean that there were not shortfalls in the area of infrastructure, in the infrastructure sector. Some of the projects were, in terms of the cost, the costs were overblown. And these are areas where we need to ask what went wrong.
Good.
And how
let me hold you. Let me hold you up there at this point. Let's go to Shitsu Mohammed Kabir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay. A lot of people have said that the administration, economic policies of the president at the time didn't impact positively on Nigerian economy. What would you say of his economic policies?
Thank you. If you look at, I want to see President Buhari as a messenger.
Okay.
And then who brought a message to Nigeria. And we look at the message he brought in the area of economic development. You see that in agricultural sector, he promote anchor borrower. The intention of anchor borrower, the messenger's intention is that it will better the life of the farmers. And really, anchor borrower came in and brought a lot of money to anchor borrower, but the operators of anchor borrower did not operate it as it should be. And that project, to me, as a farmer, I'm a farmer, is a failure. But the messenger, who is the President Buhari, meant well in that regard. If what he meant was implemented, I believe today we will not be running helter-skelter for our food security
who do we now blame for the alleged failure of the Anchor scheme?
The operators.
The operators?
It's the operators.
Why do you blame the operators?
Yes, and I'm talking from knowledge. I'm talking from knowledge.
Okay.
Because I'm a farmer. And I'm the president of Cowpea and Beans Association of Nigeria. And then also I'm the vice president of Federation of Agricultural Commodity of Nigeria. So I will tell you that the CBN governor then, when they listed and approved that cowpea should be, that is beans, should be in the list of anchor borrower. At the final meeting, he comes out to say beans is not a national product. And they dropped it. And I wrote several letters to the CBN. And why do they drop it? I later realized that they are saying they cannot play a game with us. So they drop beans. How will you, anybody that eat rice and also eat beans? In fact, beans have more nutritional. You can do various putting with it. Is it the what you can cook it as a beans? You can feed the animals with it. You can also do it as a lele. You can do it as a kara. It has various used, and a CBN governor could drop that.
Mr. Kabir,
because of
would you say the former president's closure of the borders led to the increment in the price of foodstuff, especially rice?
You see, they promote Rivan to also be able to cultivate rice. You look at the program of cultivating that rice. By the time you look at it, it's a failure. So he is a messenger who brought a message, and he gave it to some operators, and those operators failed Nigeria.
Okay, so why do you consistently blame the operators rather than blame the messenger, as you have said?
Why we can't blame the messenger now? First, as a Muslim, you don't blame the dead. Secondly, I've now realized that, okay, probably he was sick and you could not monitor them. Because as a leader, you must also be able to monitor and look at, if you are monitoring, you will know the lapses and you'll be able to correct it as at the time when you're supposed to correct it. I think we have to give him that benefit of doubt.
Okay. Okay, so just hold a thought there. I can see that Professor is reacting, but I won't come to Professor here. Let me go to Chris Akio to have his reaction regarding the former president's agricultural revolution. Did it help ensure that we farm what we eat? Did it ensure food security in the country? Chris, can you hear me? Okay, I think we have some issues. Let's go to Professor Jalili Adebi. On that question, do you think this revolution, this agricultural revolution, helped us in ensuring that we are food sufficient?
Yeah, thank you so much. So one of the things that President Muhammadu Buhari sought to give a lot of attention was actually agriculture. And I think that was a very smart decision, given what I know as a development scholar practitioner. In African countries, poverty is, in terms of proportion, you have the most number of people that are poor in the agricultural sector in Nigeria and other African countries. Not only that, majority of the people in Nigeria and other African countries, they derive their livelihood in the agricultural sector, either in the urban area or in the rural area. And so there is a consensus in scholarship among scholars that if we need to address the problem of poverty in Africa, the most important area that gives us the opportunity to address this problem frontally is in the agricultural sector. Why? The most people, they earn their livelihood from the sector, and the most amount of poverty is concentrated in this sector. What that means is that if we are able to advance agriculture in Africa in ways and manner that can contribute to increasing the livelihood income of farmers and rural community, in ways and manners that can also contribute to increase in yield sustainably over time, in ways and manner that we can also build the infrastructure for value addition. What that means is that we are not just going to be enabling the economic condition of individuals within the agricultural sector. At the same time, we are going to be building a robust rural economy. It appears that President Muhammadu Buhari understood this, and that was why agriculture was given a lot of attention. They implemented the Anchors Borrowers Program. They also implemented another program that was also pivotal, and that is also meant to be spoken about. And that is the issue of input in agriculture. Of course, I have concerns with that. We'll be getting to that. They signed a major agreement with the Moroccan government with the supply that focuses on the supply of the major raw materials needed for the local production of fertilizer, chemical fertilizer in the country. When you look at all of these things, they took the right step. However, there were issues. One of the issues was that when you look at the Anchors Borrowers Program implementation, it was flawed. It could be said that those in charge of it, the way the program was implemented, led to it being flawed.
Okay, so you also follow
the other reason why it flawed, why the program also was a failure, was because of the leadership style of President Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari was such a man that when he gives you a responsibility, he doesn't follow up.
Okay, so who would you blame for the failure? Kabir has said...
Of course, we got to blame him. We got to blame him. We got to say...
Will you blame the operators rather than the person who sent the operators?
All of them deserve to be blamed. The buck stops on the desk or the table of the president.
Okay, just hold that thought. We need to go on a quick break. So when we return, we'll still continue this conversation on Standpoint. This is Standpoint. We'll go on a break and we will return for more. Stay tuned.
Meet Benga Oreshegun, a fearless voice and an advocate for the truth. He's bringing fresh energy and bold insights to Journalist Hangout.
Get ready for deeper analysis and dynamic perspectives. Join me and Babajide Kolade Otitoju with other veteran journalists on Journalist Hangout. Weekdays from 5 p.m. and on Sundays, 1:30 p.m.
The TVC News at 7 and the TVC News at 10 are not like any other news broadcast.
It's the big news hour, the hour for the big breaking stuff.
Too high. No question too hard. If they hold an office, they are on the hot seat. If they have power, they answer to the people and answer the hard questions.
Only strong men lead, not weak men who don't have knowledge, who don't have capacity, who don't have access.
This is not just talk. This is fireworks.
Corruption started corruption in when you cannot send your animal to where they train police officers.
No filters, no favoritism, no fear, no holds barred, unbiased, unafraid, unfiltered.
Why should people elected into office and are being funded by the treasury of the state and then their salary and allowances will be treated in secrecy?
Fireworks, only on TVC News.
TVC News, first with breaking news.
You're watching Standpoint and we are still talking about the achievements of the former President Muhammadu Buhari, who died at the age of 82. Of course, tributes have been pouring in, and many have been speaking of his legacies. Of course, we have Professor Jalili via Zoom, and of course, Shitu Mohammed Kabir joining us from our Abuja studio, and we are dissecting these issues. We stopped at agriculture, and we will continue in that trend. So both of you, like Professor is saying that he blamed both parties, that's the president and the operators. Shitu Mohammed Kabir is saying he blamed the operators and not blaming the president. But the question is, Mr. Kabir, the buck, like Professor had mentioned earlier, the buck stops at the table of the president. So why do you now blame the operators rather than the man who sent them to do the job?
Okay, thank you. You see, when you are given a job, first of all, you look at how that job is succeeded, because you will succeed. Now you ask, there are certain conditions that they put that the real farmers cannot access those funds. And that is why it was abused, because you are telling the real farmers to go and bring certificate from either Lagos, Abuja, Kaduna, or Enugu. A rural farmer who has not even been to Abuja before or have never been to Lagos, where will he get that condition fulfilled? Secondly, even when you fulfill those conditions, to disburse this fund to you, it must go through a commercial bank. This commercial bank will also give you their condition. How many rural farmers can access and fulfill those conditions? We spoke, we wrote, we do everything to say, look, the world, we should also move with the world, whereby your farm can also be your own, they can be pledged. In the sense that you can be in a room and somebody is having 2,000 hectares, 1 hectare, 3 hectares. You have it in your system. And there are systems nowadays that you can know what is happening in each of the farm. So we advise that, and the operators refuse to take to those advice, and then stick with the archaic conditions, which the farmers cannot meet. Therefore, they could. So far, the farmers cannot meet those conditions. Then, the urban farmers who could take this money and trade and import. What that system is supposed to stop is importation of food and every agricultural product that we have in the country. But we end up taking this particular fund to import what we didn't want to import, we are trying to improve. So these are where this anchor borrower got to fail. And then you allocated funds without following up. You promote foreign goods. Even when the borders were closed, you still find foreign rice coming in, cheaper than the one cultivated by Nigerians. So therefore, even the financial power of the local farmers were dealt with. And that is why today you find out that when this administration comes, they have to now find all means, and the price of food starts skyrocketing because they came to meet where there's nothing on ground. We advise that NALDA should be on board. I'm one of the people that advise, and I'm one of the people that assembled the NALDA was brought in by President Babangida. Today, this administration has taken NALDA to the level we are thinking it should be. NALDA came in during the last regime, but NALDA could not have much to do until now. that I'm seeing elders working here and there. So there are so many lapses. Good intention, very good vision, mission, but could not reach the goals.
All right, let's go to Professor Jalili now.
That is how I will say of the economic development.
All right, let's go to Professor Jalili. Looking at what Mr. Shito has just said, the last part, what do you think should have been done? Should have the former president should have done better in ensuring the lots of Nigerians are okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course, I did not hear the response of Mr. Abubakar Shitu.
Okay.
You know, and but there are many things that President Muhammadu Buhari failed to do. And one of the things that he failed to do, especially in the area of the economy, and even in agriculture, was that he failed to lead from the front. He gave responsibility to people, and he assumed this layback role that typified his personality. It's a personality deficit in the life of Muhammadu Buhari, because he was such a person of the whole school order, as Buba Galadima described him, that believed that once individuals are given responsibility, the object of accountability falls on those individuals. And interestingly, you know, that became something that people that work with him, even the gentleman that has been speaking with us, you know, that they abused. Majority of them abused this. And they knew that there was nothing he could do in order to hold them accountable, because it was not in his personality to be running after people that he has given responsibility to do. So they tap into that, they exploited it, and they use it as a mechanism to enrich themselves. And that is why when you do a thorough investigation of all of those that serve with him, including the man that is on the, you know, that is on this program with us today, majority of them will be behind the bars. This is the honest truth.
Let's
he was not going to do that due diligence. So that was one of the things that he failed to do as the president of the country. If he had micromanaged those that serve under him, if he had gone a step further, ensuring that mechanisms were put in place to monitor and ensure accountability, Emefiele wouldn't have done all the things he did.
But these are people, you know, that these are people that have been very close to him over time. Don't you think that that certain level of trust?
That's another weakness of President Muhammadu Buhari. And I think it's also a problem in our political equation. You see, there is something that I was discussing with some of my colleagues yesterday. I told them that when I become the president of Nigeria, or when I become the governor of my state, and I mean this, it's something that I'm really, really interested in over time. Decisions will never be made on the basis of friendship. Decisions will never be made on the basis of family relationship. In fact, I will tell my friend, I'm in government, not for them. I'm in government, not for my family members. I'm in government for the people of the country. So decisions will be made thoroughly based on the concept of inclusion, based on the concept of equity, based on the concept of fairness. Muhammadu Buhari failed in this area. The people that he brought close to himself when he was alive that constituted his kitchen cabinet, they were all involved in all kinds of shenanigans that were not part of what you will see in President Muhammadu Buhari. They were involved in all kinds of shenanigans, looting, aiding and abetting corruption, negotiating deals. So some of us that were very close to some of the ministers,
Jalili, Professor Jalili, all of these allegations are alleged allegations. Now, you don't just give everyone a blanket allegation
you see, this is one of the problems we have in this country. You see, when we say all of these allegations, even Abdusalam Abubakar mentioned this. He mentioned this when he gave a recorded opinion about the presidency of Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari knew this. We need some people that were very close to Muhammadu Buhari, and I will also cite an article to back up my claim.
Okay, so
I'm not just talking from the say the year perspective.
Understand that you're on national television, and so whatever you say will be used against you. So let's just
it's okay. Carefully. Let anybody who wants to litigate me
let's just tread carefully. Let's just tread carefully and not put blanket accuse people of doing certain things.
I understand your concern, and
yes.
I appreciate that.
Yes,
but personality like me, we've seen it all. So when people say litigation, we say let's go to court. I will trace it out in court.
So
I was reading the article of Obafemi Ojudu. Let me make that point, please. And in this particular article, he said he had an encounter with President Muhammadu Buhari in London, in UK, and that on one of those occasions, he said when something was brought up, I think something related to corruption, Muhammadu Buhari looked up and was like, how did I get myself in the midst of these criminals? That was the look. He said it. There was another one, because I told you we work for Muhammadu Buhari. There was another one that happened. One of our elders, trusted, confidant of the president, said when he got to know that some of the people very close to him were involved in corruption activities, he bursted into tears. That he was crying that if this one could also do this, who else could he trust? So it wasn't that it was
all of these things you're saying are just we'll just take it as hearsay, okay? Professor Jalili, just hold your thought there. Let's go to Kabir Mohammed in our Abuja studio. Looking at the life and times of former President Muhammadu Buhari, what would you say you've taken away from him, a towering example of his life that many should look out for?
His doggedness, his dogged man, his resilience, and his resolve when when he has a goal to achieve. I will only say that on your question, to say that what are the lessons that our leaders should learn from the mistake of former President Buhari and late President Buhari. The lesson we should learn is that we should, as a country and as people, be able to hold our leaders account for whatever they do. And leaders should be able to look and supervise and be able to know what are their followers or those they appoint to positions are doing. And that the lessons is that we should now look at how we develop our country, how we look at insight. We are agrarian society, and as agrarian society, that's what we have to give to the world, which is agricultural product. And given this agricultural product, we must put enough infrastructures on ground to be able to bring the world to Nigeria.
Okay, so if you say enough infrastructure, what do you think should be put on ground?
Very good. Federal government, there's a notion in Nigeria, because of those that brought issue of privatization, to say government has no business in businesses. Government has business to develop its country to be competitive with other countries in an area that it can take comparative advantage. And where Nigeria can take comparative advantage is agriculture. And what are the infrastructure this agricultural need? Let's assume government must deliberately now to say we should put at least clear 1,000 agricultural land in each local government. We say 174 local government. Look at each of these states. What can they take comparative advantage on? What am I saying? If you are talking now of Lagos, you can say, okay, let's go to fishery, buy trawlers into a local government, if it's a local government, or Etiosha local government, or whatever, and give those youth trawler in Lagos, let them go to high sea. Instead of the foreigners coming to the high sea to take our stream and our fish, a streams is more costlier even than the crude that you are selling. And then they go into fishing and all that thing. That stop importation of fish and make more money to Ekpe youth, to Etiosha youth, to all the youth. If you are coming to North, look at, I've been saying it, like in Zamfara State, where you have tomato rotting away every year. You bring in infrastructure there, like tomato processing plants, and put in those areas. The people that plant to them, instead of taking it to Lagos in a basket, they will now process it and take it there. If you are talking, come to somewhere like in Borno State, where we can put up a lot of gum Arabic, or talk of ranch, talk of other things. Go to Bayelsa. Let government take 1,000 hectares there, put infrastructure, bring the processing plant for palm oil. Go to Imo, put palm oil and just deliberate process. This will make the agricultural to boost, because each area will have what it takes. Go to Oyo, you talk of cocoa.
All right.
In fact, in Oyo State, if you go to the northern part of Oyo State, you can do cotton that we are all crying for. That is where Benin Republic, where they border the Shaki area, can give you a beautiful cotton. I've done there before. So these are areas that governments will take deliberate policy to say, let's take this processing plant into these areas.
All right.
That is what will boost this thing. And luckily, the NALDA is working now. So take NALDA to clear those land, empower them, empower Women Affairs Ministry. Let them put women into agriculture. These are areas, don't concentrate on either central bank or a bank. And take out the stringent measure that you put, that somebody must bring certificate of a house, somebody must put, there are some certain technological advancement, that infrastructure that you can use to be able to look at when somebody will harvest and how you take back your money. So the government has business to use government money to develop these infrastructures.
All right.
If you leave it in the hand of the businessmen, all businessmen know is profit. Profit and profit.
All right.
So if you give them your bank money, they go and import to make profit.
All right, let's go to Professor Jalili for your final thoughts on this now.
Yeah, so regarding my final thoughts about what we can emulate from President Muhammadu Buhari, one is honesty. There is no debate about the honesty of President Muhammadu Buhari. One of the biggest issues we have in government in Africa, and that it's a big part of why we are underdeveloped, why we are faced with barrages of underdevelopment crisis, is that people get into office with the intention of stealing. When you look at the life of President Muhammadu Buhari as a public servant, there is not one single evidence that he was in office to enrich himself, that President Muhammadu Buhari stole a penny from public office. You cannot say this of all of those that have led us in the country for the most part, including those that were councillors, those that were local government chairpersons, state governors, or those that led as president. We know this. The people know this. These cases may not have been prosecuted in the court of law, but we know it from their ways of life, from how they became richer leaving office than they were when they got into offices. If there is one thing we all can emulate from him, it is that honesty.
All right.
And the other part of it, which is related to that, is that you can build integrity capital as a means of getting to high offices. When a coalition was formed, between the AMPP and the other component parts, what is this called, Action Congress of Nigeria, they bank on the integrity capital of Buhari. I wouldn't have imagined any other person that they could have presented that would have won that election except Buhari. Why? Because people were looking for somebody with that integrity capital. And that integrity capital got that alliance into the position of presidency. How do other people go about, getting into offices? They lose a lot of money when they're in charge, and they use that money to put people into positions. And when it's time for them to contest election, all of those that have benefited from what they stole from the treasury bring something together, they will campaign for them. That's the order that people follow. That is the most prevalent
we have to go at this
today.
Point.
Buhari changed that narrative.
All right.
That it is possible for somebody to become the president on the basis of integrity.
Thank you.
And I think that's another
main
thing that I would.
Thank you very much, Professor. We have to go at this time. Our time's up at the moment. Thank you so much to the former presidential candidate, Shitu Mohammed Kabir, and of course, the developmental scholar, Professor Jalili Adebi. Integration Summit Group chairperson, the convener, Chris Okio, couldn't join us, possibly because of the network. But thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Well, that's Standpoint this week. Remember, you can watch